Hi, this is Steve, and this is my weekly diet update. Okay, I didn't have time to make a video last week, but these are the results from last week. It looks like I put on a couple of pounds. I think I overate a couple times. My body fat was still 23%. But then this week, I took off a couple pounds, but my body fat looks like it went up by 1%. It could just be my body catching up to the week before when I didn't do so well. And then it shows my fat mass went up a couple pounds, but I've been back at the gym and eating right. So hopefully I'll be back on track. I'm thinking I might need to step something up, throw in another workout on the weekend, or try a different diet for the weekend. Okay, since this week I have poor results for my diet results, I'm going to share some movies that are regarded poorly, but I like them. Okay, here is Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, directed by George Lucas, late 90s. I was really hyped up to see this, of course, like any kid back then. And I have a lot of good memories with this movie. I know a lot of Star Wars fans and critics didn't like it, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. I actually saw this at the show probably more times than I've seen any movie at the show. In my old town, there was a dollar movie theater, and they would play older movies that had been out for a couple of weeks. And Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace was one of the movies playing there. And my buddy and I would go watch it every night after judo. So I probably saw this movie at the theater 10 times for $1 a piece, and I enjoyed it every time. I even watched the re-release of this a few years ago at the theater, and I enjoyed it just as much then. I know it's not like the old Star Wars movies. Of course, I like the older ones better, but I thought this was a good first movie to a trilogy, and I thought it was only going to get better after this, but I didn't think that's what happened. I think this is my favorite of the old trilogy. There's the pod race scene, and then the little fight at the end with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Liam Neeson, and that's probably regarded as the best part of the prequel series by most people. Oh, Jar Jar Binks is annoying, but he was like the only comic relief in the movie. Everything else was so serious. He didn't bother me that much. I'm sorry. What I like about this one is the plot's pretty much just straightforward. It goes from one place to the next. It's not a bunch of different things going on at once. Anyway, enough about that. Okay, Zack Snyder, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, from last year or the year before it came out. I saw this at the show with my wife, and I really liked it. I liked the visuals, and I like the way Superman looks. I like Batman. This is probably my favorite Batman of all time. I know a lot of people don't like him because he's too mean, but I think in the story it explains this is a changed Batman, and he's a darker Batman, and he's not going to throw down a gun in a gunfight if he gets his hands on one. Superman's kind of too mopey for me. I like the guy who plays Superman in here, but this whole movie is a little too mopey and dark for me. I kind of prefer more of the Christopher Lee style or the Adam West style. Batman and Superman type shows. I just heard Adam West passed away, so God rest his soul. Yeah, these movies here, I know I was supposed to talk about how I like this movie, but these things are so darn dark, and like everyone's so miserable about the world. Back in the 60s, there was bad stuff going on, but it didn't really show on the TV shows like Adam West's Batman. That was a pretty upbeat, happy, positive show. He was a good role model. He wasn't moping around being emo all the time like these in the Nolan movies. Anyway, off of that, I was gonna say I like this movie. despite it being dark and mopey and brooding, the visuals in here I like. I like the story. I know people don't understand it, but I thought the story was fine. The Lex Luthor in here, I like the character. I thought he was a good bad guy, but that's not really what I wanted from a Lex Luthor. Maybe I kind of wanted an older bald guy, and not a weird little kid. But the kid did a pretty good job for what it was. It just didn't seem like Lex Luthor. Yeah, I just really like the cinematography in here, and the scenes with Bruce Wayne really feels like a James Bond movie or something to me. Yeah, Batman is such a jerk in this movie, and he just really wants to kill Superman for bringing all this war to the planet Earth. And then at the end there's a little twist which gets Batman and Superman together, and I really like the little twist. What finally made Batman see the light, his little epiphany. I really liked it. And then there's a really great scene with Batman rescuing Martha Kent, Batman or Superman's mother, from a bunch of thugs. It's really good, and you're really into it too, because it's not just Batman beating up a bunch of thugs for the heck of it. He's like trying to save Superman's mom. So I really like certain parts of this movie. But overall, I enjoy the movie. Okay, here's another one people really hate. Jaws the Revenge. I think it was 86 or 87 when it came out. I never saw it at the theaters. I think I was too little to go to the shows back then. Anyway, so I saw it when I was a kid on VHS, and it took a while for me to process this movie, but I remember that night I thought about the movie a lot. And the next day at school, I was thinking about the movie a lot when I should have been doing my schoolwork, but when it all settled down, I really liked this movie, and I went back and watched it many times. This is one of the first VHSs I actually bought. I think my mom got it for me for Christmas one year, the VHS, and then I went on to watch it over and over and over, because I had been a big, huge fan of Jaws and Jaws 2 and Jaws 3 before I saw this one. This one kind of goes off the beaten path, not as much as Jaws 3. It's directed by Joseph Sargent, who did another movie I really like, The Taking of Flam 1, 2, 3. And I think he mostly just directed like TV show episodes and stuff, but this movie gets slagged off. Okay, I like this movie, and I like the characters, and I like the motivations of the characters in here. The acting is really good. This is Michael Caine being classic Michael Caine. A lot of good Michael Caine lines from this movie. All of the family, the kid from The Last Starfighter's in here. I think his name is Lance Guest. Mario Van Peebles is in here. He's good in everything. I really like him in this. I know people say he has a fake Bahamian accent, but I've never been there, so it sounds authentic and genuine to me. I really like his character, and I think he pulls it off good. It's very likable, just like Matt Hooper's character in Jaws, the original Jaws. Kind of similar to that. I'm not saying this is anywhere near as good as the original Jaws. I'm just saying I like the characters, I like the acting, and I like the motivation of the characters. There's a lot of secrets going around in this movie. Secrets between the mother and the son. And then Michael Caine's character is thrown in there, and all the characters I like in here, even the smaller roles like Mike's wife and his little girl. Yeah, and this movie is always set during the daytime, and you'd think that would make it less scary, but something about this movie is very unsettling. I don't know if it's the music score. The musical score is really creepy and eerie, but it's always set during daytime bright in the Bahamas. But there's always this danger lurking out somewhere out there in the crystal clear waters and the bright sun that I really like. I don't know, something about this movie is very unsettling, although it's bright and beautiful everywhere. And the shark, I know a lot of people say the mechanical shark in here looks crappy, but I think they put a lot of work into this shark and did a lot of improvements from the first one. The first one looks the best, I think, but this is made over 10 years later, so they've made some improvements, like the upper jaws kind of retract. Yeah, but the big mechanical shark in here, it doesn't look like a real shark, of course, but it never really looked like a real shark in any of the Jaws movie, but it felt like a living, breathing creature that was going to eat you. That's why I've always liked the shark design in the Jaws movies. It felt like a real creature that you wouldn't want to be in the water with. Let me just say, in the DVD and the VHS versions of this movie, the shark's death is really poorly executed. The original theatrical version, which I never had a chance to go see, the shark was rammed with the bow of the boat, and the whole boat just sunk to the bottom of the sea with the shark. In the VHS version and the DVD version, for whatever reason, it was edited to where the shark gets stabbed with the bow of the boat, and then the shark blows up, and it just like shows a little toy model of a shark blow up, and then it cuts to the shark sinking from Jaws 1, just the same footage. And I that wasn't enough for it to ruin the movie for me, but it doesn't really make any sense. I think this movie would get a lot less hatred if it just used the original theatrical ending with a shark death, where the shark just gets stabbed and then it sinks to the bottom of the sea. The shark blowing up doesn't really make any sense to me. But other than that, like, I really love this movie. Love the characters, love the scenery, of course, in the Bahamas. Love the acting. A couple parts are pretty suspenseful. There's an underwater chase. The shark is chasing Mike Brody, the scuba diver, through an old sunken ship. It's really good. Anyway, enough about that. Wasting enough time. Okay, here's one I really like. Howard the Duck. I know this is a great big joke and everyone hates it. I'm sorry, but this is my favorite comic book movie. I didn't even know it was a comic book back then. I don't know if it's the movie that's so great or just the memories that come with this. Probably one of the first times I went to the show when I was a kid. I went with all of my cousins and my auntie. I think my mom and dad were there too, and my sister. We all went and saw this movie, and it was awesome. I remember we went to the flea market before this and bought little ninja action figures, and my cousins and I were playing with ninja action figures in the car, and then we got to the movie theater, and my cousin was telling me, we're going to go watch Howard the Duck, and I didn't know what Howard the Duck was. I said, what's Howard the Duck? And he said, it has a duck in it. I mean, and I said, like a duck, like quack quack, and he says, no, like a duck, like a duck. So I didn't know what this movie was from what my cousin was telling me, but then we saw it, and it was a movie about a little duck guy from outer space that comes to Earth. And I loved it when I was a kid. I know there was some people say it's weird that a little duck guy falls in love with a human woman, but I didn't know about stuff like that when I was a kid. I just said, oh, go, the little duck has a beautiful human girlfriend. I didn't understand about stuff like that. So, and since then it never really bothered me. Nothing ever happened between them. But this silly movie. Oh, and this is directed by Willard Hayek, who did a lot of writing for George Lucas with the Indiana Jones movies, and I think American Graffiti. He also directed a movie I really liked back in the 70s called Messiah of Evil. That was a zombie movie I liked. It was a zombie vampire type movie I liked from back then. I always remember the guy's name, Willard Hayek, because his last name looks like the word duck, kind of, and he directed Howard the Duck. But anyway, yeah, Leah Thompson from Back to the Future is in here. I've noticed she's in a lot of things I like. This and Back to the Future and Jaws 3. But she's like a rock and roller from Earth that befriends Howard the Duck from outer space. He's like a little loser sleazeball from his planet, and then he comes to Earth and doesn't do very well, but then at the end he ends up saving the world. So I kind of like how he starts off as a loser, just your average everyday loser, and then he becomes a hero at the end. Just typical stuff like that. I like stuff like that. And then Tim Robbins from Shawshank Redemption's in here, and he's some loser nerd that's friends with Howard here. And I kind of like the chemistry between him and Howard. Pretty good comedy in here. Some pretty good action at the end, accompanied to a John Barry score. John Barry, that did the James Bond movie music, did the music for that, and I think that's one of the reasons I really like this movie. The score in this movie is amazing. I know you wouldn't expect it, but this blows away any new superhero movie score. Go listen to the music of this. It's free to listen to on YouTube. There's a lot of good jazzy music and a lot of good action, suspenseful music. But the end scene... Oh, and then the guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the principal, is in here. That's a really fun character too. He's a scientist that gets possessed by a demon from outer space, and then he's trying to go use this teleport machine to bring back down the other demons from or monsters or whatever they are from outer space. But this guy, the guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he's gradually turning into a monster more and more. He's just a scientist with a lab coat, and he's drawn to power, so every time he absorbs more energy, he starts to transform more and starts talking funny. He's sort of like the villain in this movie, but I really enjoyed that villain. And at the end of this movie has a really good stop motion monster. I know CG is pretty good these days, but I still always prefer stop-go animation and puppets and stuff, and the puppet creature in here at the end is so amazing. Anyway, that's about it with Howard the Duck. I'm going on forever today. This is going to take forever to upload. Okay, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Raul Julia in Steven D'Souza's Street Fighter. Steven D'Souza did a lot of writing for really great action movies like Die Hard, Commando, The Running Man, and then he directed this movie. I remember I was really pumped about this because I love Street Fighter. I've always loved Street Fighter. This is probably one of my favorite video games of all time. So my buddy and I, a lot of my friends too, were all pumped up about this movie. And I remember reading an interview in Electronic Gaming Monthly or Game Pro, one of those magazines back then, with the director Steven D'Souza, and he was talking about the movie, and it sounded pretty good. But the only thing I didn't like about what he said in his interview was they asked him what it's about, and he said, "Oh, you know, it could be about a fighter joining a tournament to prove himself, but that's been done a million times, so we wanted to make it more like Star Wars." And then I was thinking, oh man, no. Because I love movies like Bloodsport. I can't get enough of that stuff. I was hoping the Street Fighter movie was going to be a movie about a fighting tournament. There could be little stories thrown in there, little sub-stories, just like in the game. But I don't want Street Fighter to be Star Wars. But that ended up being what it was, and I kind of liked it. I was disappointed that there was no tournament. Yeah, the one time it looked like there was going to be a cage match, I was, oh, this is going to be cool. It was going to be Ryu against Vega inside of a cage. But then when they were about to fight, Jean-Claude Van Damme busts in with a tank and breaks up the operation and arrests everyone. So but anyway, Other than that, the movie is pretty fun. I can say it is a lot like Star Wars, like they were trying to make it something big. Or it's a lot like an episode of G.I. Joe. But anyway, one of the things I do like about it are a lot of the characters represent how they look in the video game. Like Vega in here looks perfect. He looks like you just took him out of the game. There he is right there. And but anyway, yeah, he just looked just like in the game. Ken and Ryu, I wasn't crazy about. They looked good. The actors that played them could have pulled off video game-like versions of them, but they were like armed smugglers or something. I don't know why they were that. Like they couldn't they just be fighters? But they had to do this silly story in there. Oh, Zangief in here looks perfect. Just looks like out of the game. M. Bison, Raul Julia, he really brought it to this movie. I think it was the last movie he made before he passed away. And I heard he was just in it because his kids like Street Fighter and they wanted him to be in the movie. But he's really an over-the-top, funny villain in this. I really liked it. Kind of reminds me of something like Christopher Lloyd would do, like really crazy over-the-top character. What else? Jean-Claude Van Damme is just himself in there. You can't really ask for any less or more. There aren't a lot of martial arts fights in here. The ones that there are alright, I guess. Yeah, but Street Fighter is a pretty fun movie if you like stuff like G.I. Joe, stuff like that. Okay, here's one I really like. Here's another one. I might just like it for the memories that go along with it. Masters of the Universe, the He-Man movie that came out in the late 80s. This is another one of the movies, one of the first movies I saw at the theater when I was a kid. And I was big into He-Man when I was a kid. I had all the action figures. I watched the TV show every day. And then I kind of got out of it for a while. I think Ninja Turtles was coming around, or I was more into Transformers or whatever. But then this movie came out, and I think a buddy of mine went and saw it. And that got me back into He-Man, watching this movie. I really liked this movie. It was a lot different from the cartoon, of course, but from what was here, I really liked it. It was like taking He-Man and all of the He-Man characters out of their universe and bringing them to Earth in the 80s and having an adventure. And I've always liked stuff like that. I guess the reason they did that was because of the budget. I watched the director's commentary with the director. His name is Gary Goodard. And I really liked the commentary on this movie. It made me like the movie even more. I'm a sucker for movies with the commentary. But anyway, I guess the reason it went to Earth was because of the budget. They couldn't build all of these big fancy sets in Eternia, fantasy sets. The one they have, the interior of the palace, is really, really good. I think it's one of the biggest indoor sets ever made. It's really big and beautiful. It's like a big throne room. But the stuff that is on Eternia looks really good, but most of the movie's set on Earth. And it's really fun 80s flick. This like typifies the sci-fi action 80s flick to me. Dolph Lundgren's in here and he pulls off this He-Man well. He doesn't talk too much. The He-Man in the cartoon, I liked him. He was a chatterbox. He was always talking. He was always trying to talk his way out of problems and reason with people and joke around with his friends. But this He-Man was more... I guess he was a fun character too, but he didn't talk as much. I don't know if it's because Dolph has an accent and it's hard to understand him. I never have a hard time understanding him. But anyway, yeah. So Dolph and Teela and Man-at-Arms. And the Teela and Man-at-Arms I thought were pretty good. That's what I would expect a real-life Teela and Man-at-Arms to look like. There was no Orko, the little floaty wizard guy. But there was a little troll-looking guy, or a little hobbit-looking guy called, I think his name was Gwildor, or Gwildoff. But he was played by that little guy, I think his name's Billy Barty. And that was a little fun character. He was sort of this movie's answer to Orko. But and then that's another thing from the commentary I found out was they couldn't do Orko because that would have been too expensive for all that animation or special effects. So they had the little guy dressed up as this little creature, Gwildor. So basically, He-Man and all of his buddies are. I think the sorceress of Grayskull is kidnapped, and He-Man and his buddies end up using this cosmic key to escape, and they end up on Earth. And then Skeletor and all of his men are trying to get the cosmic key. And the Skeletor in here is really good too. He's not anything like the Skeletor in the cartoon, but he's a really fun evil villain played by Frank Langella. And he pulls off a really fun, over-the-top villain, just like Raul Julia did in Street Fighter. Yeah, Evil Lynn's in here, and Beastman from the cartoon. All the rest are new, made-up villains. And they all look really good. I wasn't crazy about them at the time because I was hoping, hey, where's Triclops or Trapjaw? But the villains in here were pretty good. One of the things I like about this movie are the visuals. It looks really good, and a lot of it's at nighttime. On the director's commentary, Mr. Goodard was saying it would look silly to have people like He-Man, the way he's dressed, and all of the people from Eternia walk around in broad daylight on Earth. So they always had it at nighttime. And it makes it look really good. And there's always like little neon signs off to the side or in the background, in the back alleys or whatever, that are kind of casting a light on the characters. And it makes the characters look really cool at nighttime. Like they would probably look silly at daytime, but with the lighting and it's sort of dark at nighttime, the characters look really cool. And then some of the other people in here, I know Courtney Cox is in here when she was a teenager. And then her boyfriend in here is one of the guys from Star Trek Voyager, one of the boring, ordinary guys. I don't remember much about Star Trek Voyager, but I remember there were two guys that were just sort of there, and he was one of them. But he was in here. He was a fun character. He was like a musician. He found the cosmic key, and he thought it was a musical instrument. And then Principal Strickland's in here from Back to the Future. That guy's fun in anything he is. It really has a good 80s feel when that guy's in there. The little bald guy. I think his name is James Tolkien. Yeah, that actor from Back to the Future. He's in here. He's a cop that has to deal with all these weird creatures from another planet, and he's a fun guy. Kind of butts heads with the good guys, but he's really likable and fun. Oh, the music in here is by Bill Conti. I love the score in here. He did the Rocky movies, and of course one of my favorites, For Your Eyes Only, the Bond movie. But the music in here is really good. Very, very Star Wars-esque, Superman-esque. Yeah, that's about it for this movie. There's fun to be had in any movie. I don't like going to the movie with a bad attitude thinking I'm going to hate this. I spend all that money on there. I don't want to go be miserable. So maybe I'm just too easy on movies, but there are movies I don't like, but these are not any of them. Okay, well, I'll see you next week with my diet update. I hope to have some better progress by then. Have a good week and see you later. Bye.